Hey, this is Matt. Once again, welcome back to the videos. The paid request is time for Andrew. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. It'll be a review, video game try, playthrough, commentary, reaction, movie topic, whatever the case may be. Links are down below in the info box. So Andrew wanted me to talk about the 1998 film Dirty Work. And it's sad watching this film again because of the people involved, and a chunk of them having passed away. The director, Bob Saget, yes, the same Bob Saget who's one of the stars of the TV show Full House, America's Funniest Home Videos. I think by this point he had gotten done with that show. We're trying to see what to do later on in life. So he directed this movie. It stars Norm MacDonald, another guy who has passed away. One of the few things he got to be a leading guy in a role, because he's most famous for being on Saturday Night Live. He did big parts in films like Billy Madison, among other movies. Quite a few Adam Sandler films he did big parts in. The only films I could think of he starred in was this one, and I think Screwed with Dave Chappelle. I believe that one. I think Danny DeVito was in that. But yeah, those who have passed away. Chris Farley's in the film. He has passed away. You'll see Chevy Chase has a big part in the film. Artie Lange is Norm MacDonald's co-star. You got Christopher McDonald, who's the bad guy in Happy Gilmore. Shooter McGavin, he's in the film. The female actress, I forget her name, but she was Tony Shalhoub's character Munch's assistant throughout a good chunk of the show, because there's one lady who was his assistant, but then either she got fired or something happened, she was gone after a few seasons, and then the rest of the show was this other actress, and that's the one who's the love interest here. Who else was in it? Oh, Gary Coleman has a cameo. Adam Sandler has a cameo. So a lot of familiar people in this. And the setup of the movie is you get a bit of backstory of Norm MacDonald as a kid, his character, where he may be picked on by bullies, but he was always good at revenge schemes. So they put some guns in this bully's locker, and they call the cops, and the kid gets arrested. Or this crossing guard that like to slap kids on the butt, he super glues his, so when the guy tries to get stuck, and the kid yells out, "Hey, look what this guy's doing! Look what this guy's doing!" But the guy can't get his hand off because it's super glued. So he had a tendency to do that. As many years later, he's with his buddy Artie Lange. Artie Lange, I mean, he was probably most well known as the many years he was with the Howard Stern show. I think he was also in this film called Beer League with Rob Macchio. I think that's what it was called, which I remember not minding. And Artie Lange's dad died. I don't know why I got so really southern there. Died. Jack Warden. He's a tough guy. Him and Norm don't get along the best, but he's still got some strength in him. Because behind his back, Norm calls him creepy, and the guy doesn't think Jack Warden can hear it. But it's like, "Oh, hey, I hope you're doing well. You know, I can still hear, despite being creepy, I can still hear you, little sucker." And Norman's like, hey, help. But one thing leads to another, and Jack Warden has a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Chevy Chase is the doctor, and he says, "Listen, I did some poor bets. I owe $50,000 to my bookie. If you're able to get $50,000, I get him on a list and save his life." So then Norm MacDonald and Artie Lange have to figure out how to get this $50,000, and ultimately they decide, after some little jobs here and there now working out, they start a revenge for hire business. You want your dirty work done? We'll do your dirty work for you. Now, the film, it's a fun movie. I do enjoy the movie. I would like to have seen what it was untainted, meaning, from what I understand, when the script was written and it was being filmed, it was a rated R movie. but it got pushed into a PG-13 shell. And so you could tell the movie seemed to want to have a bit of a harder edge. There's even a couple jokes in there that survive. There's a bit of an edge to it, including a scene where McDonald and Artie are in prison. It get the idea that Norm was butt bamboozled, so to speak. And the way he plays it off is pretty funny, where he's like, it's ridiculous. Okay, what you did was ridiculous. It was way out of line. Does Norm... He had this dry, intelligent sense of humor to him, which did make him interesting as a lead. I could see that it would not be everyone's cup of tea, so I don't think he would ever been a big mainstream star compared to like Adam Sandler and other people, but I think some people would go, he's too off, or again, he's too dry, he's too this. But he worked well, and it would have been nice to see him in more leading man roles, but this film did nothing at the box office. Absolutely nothing. But again, certain lines Norm would say, like he had this tape recorder, note to self, learn to fight. Or him and Artie get in a fight in a bar with these other people, and it's like, wait, can I be on their side? Or he's find out, wait a minute, how come you get a pool cue? Probably one of the funnier bits is when they're talking with Chevy Chase, and Chevy's talking about all the bets he lost. It's like this, Mr. T. And Norm stops and, wait a minute. Are you telling me you bet on the fight in Rocky 3? And you bet against Rocky? I thought that was pretty funny. Chris Farley, this is the last film released with him in it, because sadly he passed away. I guess it would have been 1997 he passed away. Now, Chris Farley, I love Chris Farley. I miss Chris Farley. I love Tommy Boy. I like Black Sheep. I even like Beverly Hills Ninja. I know Chris Farley didn't. There's a story about he saw a screening and he went to the bathroom and he cried. I'm sitting there going, I don't think it's nearly that bad. I thought it was a funny movie, but I guess to him he wanted something different. I don't know. But he had problems not only with his weight, not only with overeating, but more so his drug problem. And people tried to help. He wouldn't listen. It always seemed like he never thought he was funny enough. He never thought he was good enough. He was always like seeking for attention. Was that funny? Was that funny? I'm like, dude, so millions of people think you're fucking funny. You're hilarious. But he just couldn't see it. Which is the sad part. And drugs, hell of a thing. He died. From what I understand, the lady who was with him could have saved his life if she had called soon enough and contacted soon enough, but she didn't, because she was an idiot, or drugged out as well. I think at that time Chris Farley was doing lines for, not those kind of lines, but dialogue for Shrek, because he was going to star in Shrek. And he did a good chunk of it. What was it, like 80%, or like a good chunk of the role was recorded. You only need a little bit more. So there's one part of, well, maybe we'll just finish it and then maybe get, I don't know, Chris's brother or someone else to record the rest of the lines. But I guess they're like, not going to do it, so then they got Mike Myers. Would Shrek have been a big hit if Chris Farley voiced it, not Mike Myers, who brought the Scottish accent to it? I don't know. Who knows? I think it would have been a successful movie. As successful, I don't know. But yeah, Chris Farley, Almost Heroes was the last one he starred in. Wasn't that good of a movie. Better than Wagon Z's, the last one, John Candy. But still. But there's films he did released posthumously. This was, I think, the very last one. And he has a smaller part. He's a guy who is friends with Norm MacDonald, and his nose was bitten off by a Saigon hooker. And he definitely gives that anime performance. You can tell physically he's a bit bigger than even before. His voice sounds a little bit more raspy, but he still has that lovable energy, even though he's playing this guy that, again, his nose was bitten off. He's definitely a high point in the film. But you could tell something was a bit off. I still really liked his performance, but, again, compared to before, it seemed like he aged 10 years when it only been a couple, what, Tommy Boy was, what, 95? 94 maybe? 94? And maybe, or 95. Because I think Black Sheep was 96. Can't remember. Anyway, Tommy Boy was 94, 95. So, it's like it's only been a few years, but it feels like you aged double. So, but, that kind of abuse on your body does take a toll. But it's still nice to see Chris Farley, miss the guy. I like the 90s soundtrack. It's very nostalgic. You have the tub thumping, I did not down, but I did up again, no matter. I did not down, I did up again, you never gonna keep me down. I did not down, I did up again, you never gonna keep me down. By Chumbawamba, you got Semi-Charmed Kind of Life. Do 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 do. It was used in the trailer for Mr. Nice Guy, the Jackie Chan film. And not just those, but there's a lot of songs on here. It's like, wow, that brings me back to this era and this age, sort of the bigger hits of that age. And by that point, 98, I was 15 years old, so that's when I'm really starting to get to know my lot in life, so to speak. But yeah, the setup, them trying to find odd jobs. I do like the bit where one of the little jobs is to test this brownie and doesn't do anything to Artie Lange, but for Norm, he's scratching, he's hallucinating. One of the hallucinates is Gary Coleman. What you talking about, Willis? Next to him, and then there's Adam Sandler in his cameo as the devil. And I think he says the line, "We eat the pig and then we burn. Burn." Comedy's subjective, so what makes one funny to one but not to the other, I don't know. But there's definitely some entertaining goofiness to it. The movie theater where the manager is Don Rickles, I think that's another guy who's passed away. He's a movie theater manager, and he's a guy that definitely was good at giving those verbal jabs at people. Like when he's talking to Norma down to Artie Lange, calls, "Oh, you look like a bucket of lard on a bad day." And he looks at Norm, "Oh, look at you. You got the personality of a dead moth." And that's when the idea of the other people go, "Man, if someone could get him, I'd pay you $20 or $30. So they show a film, Men in Black. What was it? It was a porno, but it's like Men in Black like to do stuff to other. It was like a long title that showed it was a porno, so people get horrified and then they run out, and Don Rickles gets fired. So when they realize they get some money for this, he said, "Wow, to make a business out of this." So like they advertise like this guy, and I recognize the guy. He was the pilot in States on a Plane. He's done a lot of stuff. Playing the, I forget his name. I'll just look up his name real quick. But I know I should have been more prepared. Krumholtz or no? What was his last name? Koechner. David Koechner. Yeah, David Koechner. He's done a lot of stuff. He was in Anchorman as Champ Kind. He was in the pilot Stays on a Plane. He was in Talladega Nights. He was in Paul. Okay. He was in the film Chips. He was in Reno 911, the movie. Krampus. Scouts got to the zombie apocalypse. He was the scout leader. Got a bit of a bald head. He was in Piranha 3 Double D. Forgot about that. He was in Get Smart. He's popped up a lot of stuff. David Koechner. He plays the car salesman. And the way this is done is they did advertisements. So Norman's like, he hires a bunch of hookers to pretend to play dead in the trunk so that when Artie's opening the trunk, it's like, oh, look, there's a dead hooker in your trunk. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. All these cars, they're loaded with dead hookers. I wish we could have seen more like of them doing random dirty work and like maybe it gets popular. Because you only see them do about one or two things. Like this is the get the commercial time. But you see like them helping a guy with this bearded lady, actually played by Rebecca Romijn, who was Mystique in the early X-Men movies. And like she's being trashy, being a dick, and so they shave her beard when she's sleeping. She's just horrified. She's no longer the bearded lady anymore. They go to this place that's causing too much ruckus. They don't want to hide some fish. Unbeknownst to them, it's a meetup for these mobsters. Something goes awry, and Norm and Artie just hears all this gunfire and bloodshed. Oh my god, not the chainsaw! No, now you're using it on me. That's funny because it really lets the imagination play out because you obviously you don't see what's happened, but you hear it. It's really the deadpan reactions that Norm and Artie have that make that scene funny. And then on the top of it, Artie is still trying to put fish. He's like, "What are you doing?" So those are only two brief ones. I kind of wish it was like a montage to show that their business is actually catching a bit of fire. But no, instead we get to our villain, Christopher McDonald, who played a lot of these type of villains throughout these movies. I didn't Shooter McGavin, Happy Gilmore is probably the more prominent one. You'll pay. Listen to what I say. Oh, and I'll go live out in the bay I just may. What do you say? I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? So with the lines he's given, is that up to par, Shooter McGavin? But it's always still nice to see him in there. Because he can play a slimy villain fairly well. Pretty much play in his sleep. But I will admit, it doesn't have as much of the biting, funny lines as Shooter McGavin had in Happy Gilmore. And I mean, he tricks him into messing up this building. Unbeknownst to them, the building's with innocent people. It's a building that Christopher McDonald needed people out of. And it's also where Norm's kind of new girlfriend, her grandma's in. Her aunt or her grandma's in. And now they're kicked out. And like they try to do this love story between Norm Macdonald and the girl. It really goes nowhere. I mean, I don't know if Norm is really the right guy to have for like possible love story relationship type of sequences. Plus, they don't really do much with it. Like she's smiling at him and acceptable to certain things he says, but I can't really say they had much either chemistry or just there wasn't much screen time with it. So it kind of felt like, well, why was this needed in the first place? It felt like it was just thrown in there because, well, it's got to have some girlfriend aspect to it. It's gotta. You have the thing with Chris Farley and Tommy Boy with this girl on the boat and who likes him. Or Happy Gilmore is a girlfriend. Even Billy Madison is a girlfriend. It's gotta be in it. It's like it was thrown in there because it's a trope, not that it was really needed or wanted or really that effective. So I thought that was a weak part of it. And the way they did revenge at the end is like, whatever. Pretty much they screw up this opera. They ruin this opera. Where the one guy was a singer, they kind of get him out of the equation. They serve people these brownies. Norm had the stuff recorded accidentally. So he's... I almost said Shooter McGavin. He shows Christopher McDonald. I feel like it could have been more funnier, intricate, dirty work job to really ruin Chris McDonald's business. But it was more intricate where it ruins his house and it ruins his job as well as ruining the opera house. Like it was more complicated. Pretty much they do a couple things. He shows the audio, gets to sign this bit where the family and the grandma they get their building back and all this stuff. Things work out for the end. But I don't know, it just didn't seem as funny or as hilarious or as entertaining as the rest of the movie. Like I said, other than the bit way before that where they get arrested and that bit where you know what happened to Norm MacDonald. He got cornholed, but he plays it off as so ridiculous. Man, way out of line. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Just not many times you're going to play off that scene in that way. John Goodman's here as the mayor, but it's a really nothing part. I just say it's the same year as The Big Lebowski, and he was doing other movies too, so maybe it just did as a favor to Bob Saget or Norm or whoever. But I wish John Goodman had something more to do. It's like, it's great to see him in there, but he's like, again, really given nothing to do other than just, hey, I'm the mayor, here's the opera, enjoy. That's pretty much it. I will admit that the last bit is kind of funny. Spoiler. I've been spoiling it, but he's like, oh, we got a business, and I got a girlfriend, and that doctor, Chevy Chase, he paid off his bookies. But they decided to beat him up and kill him anyway. Well, goodbye. Like, that felt Norm-like to end the movie on. Just this deadpan, matter-of-fact way. Because he would do that like, hey, homeless people. Hey, big lady. How you doing, Mr. Lethargic? Like, he would give people their monikers of who they really are and then talk to them. Like, Norm did that a lot when you see, like, skits and other stuff. So, like I said, Norm MacDonald was just a guy who was so intelligent compared to a lot of comedians. I always remember the bit where, I forget what year it was, but, you know, everybody had done a Donald Trump joke. And they would go, well, how come you don't do it? And Norm goes, well, because everybody else does it. It's lazy. You know? Yeah, everybody does it, and it's just lazy. I don't know. Just everyone does it. And like, it seemed like he was not stuttering, but it seemed like he was just, his mind was wandering. It would seem like he was kind of just repeating himself over again, or he would kind of, his verbiage would go off the beaten path and kind of go off into the outer skirts of the fields. But there's something more to it, and that's why people like Dave Chappelle gave so much credit to Norm MacDonald, because this guy could be just so much smarter than you, so much like biting humor than you. But it didn't seem like a nice guy. It didn't seem like anybody had an issue with Norm MacDonald, other than the one guy with NBC, which I guess one guy was the head of NBC, was a big fan of O.J. Simpson, got tired of Norm taking shots at O.J. And there's rumors that's how he got fired from Saturday Night Live. I don't know if that's true. But what I had heard was that the guy from NBC told Norm, stop making fun of O.J. But Norm didn't, because O.J. was guilty. We all know O.J. was guilty and he got off innocent. I mean, come on now. But, you know, the guy got butthurt because it's his buddy, and then Norm kept doing it, and then he got fired. And that's what I heard. And I also heard, well, NBC, you know, they wouldn't give a lot of advertisement space to Dirty Work, so a lot of people didn't know it was out. The poster would say, coming soon. Okay, when is soon? Is soon next month, next week, next day, or next year? But yeah, the movie didn't do anything box office-wise. Let me look up what it did. And the poster didn't really sell much, because if people didn't know who Norm MacDonald was, they'd be like, who's this? But it made says $10 million. I don't know if that's 10 million in the US or 10 million worldwide. 10 million in the US. It was in 1,776 theaters and it had an opening of $3.6 million. It opened at number 9 in June. Number 1 was The Truman Show. Number 2, 6 Days, 7 Nights. Number 3, A Perfect Murder. Number 4, Can't Hardly Wait. Number 5, Godzilla. Number 6, Hope Floats. Number 7, Deep Impact. Number 8, The Horse Whisperer. And number 9, Dirty Work. So you had Jim Carrey's The Truman Show, which Jim Carrey was a big name. And most of his films have been very successful. And other than Liar Liar the year before, this is also seemed like the step back from the table guy. Yeah, a new Harrison Ford film, 6 Days, 7 Nights. Godzilla had a lot of hype. It didn't make as much money as they thought it would, but it still had a lot of hype and is still rising a little bit of that hype. Deep Impact was a bit of a bigger blockbuster movie. Soon, in the summer, you did Armageddon. So, definitely a lot of competition. Again, if the masses didn't know who Norm MacDonald was, then it wasn't really going to do much. But I think it's an entertaining movie. It's a fun flick. Like I said, I do wish we saw a bit more of the Revenge for Hire business and maybe get more popular or a cult underground and the cops had to come and they had to fake up a business. I wish the ending was a bit more memorable and the dirty work act of sabotaging Christopher McDonald. I mean, maybe they had more, but they had to cut it because it had to be PG-13. I don't know. But other than that, it's still a fun flick. It's nice to see Norm as the lead. Artie Lange's okay. I agree with my friend John the Zero Cole. He did a review of this, and he said, would have been nice if Chris Farley was in that role. Again, maybe because Chris Farley was busy doing other stuff. Maybe because, hey, his drug issues. We don't know how dependable he is. Maybe Farley thought, yeah, he's a lead, so to be the co-star. But while I don't mind Artie Lange, it would have been nice to see Chris Farley, because Artie Lange is fine. The chemistry between him and Norm MacDonald was fine. But I saw a lot more of a chemistry spark between Norm and Chris Farley in those scenes they shared. Makes sense, because they've known each other for a while since the days of Saturday Night Live. So you do tell, even then, it's like they have this, again, the good chemistry, and I think Chris Farley, it probably would have been a bigger hit, too. Does he have Norm, and then Chris Farley, and then Chris Farley's passed away, so people are like, oh, let's go see the last film Chris Farley's done. Probably would have made a bit more money at the box office as well. I'm surprised they didn't put him on the poster, because a lot of times, let's sell a guy. Because marketing, they don't care if it's right or wrong, or if it's good or bad taste, but I'm surprised they didn't try to sell his image, his face on the poster, but like I said, I think in retrospect, it would have been nice to see Chris Farley in the Artie Lange role. Not to take him away from Artie, but I think that Norm and Chris had a bit more of that chemistry together. And like I said, the love story didn't really amount to much. But overall, I did get some chuckles and laughs out of it. Rest in peace to Norm, Bob Saget, Chris Farley. I think Jack Warden has passed away. I think Don Rickles has passed away. It is crazy. I mean, 1998 doesn't seem that long ago, but so many people in this have passed away. It's sad. But anyway, it is what it is. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.